Imagine it's your first flight, and as the plane begins its descent, you look out the window to see everything shrouded in thick fog. Visibility is nearly zero, just a few hundred feet at best. And suddenly, you're wondering, how do pilots manage to land safely in such conditions? It's a legitimate question that many of us have pondered when faced with the daunting thought of landing an aircraft under such limited visibility. So, let's dive into how pilots handle this challenge. And here's the surprising part. Most runways have lights that help pilots see even when it's foggy. These lights are like a map, guiding them down. Imagine you're walking at night in a dark forest. It could be scary and hard to see where to go. But what if there were bright lights on the ground, pointing the way? That's exactly what those runway lights do. Runway lights come in different colors. White lights for the entire length of the runway, and red ones for the final part before landing. The red lights are like stop signs, telling pilots to slow down and prepare for touchdown. And just like how a map helps you navigate an unfamiliar place, these lights help pilots find their way even when foggy conditions make it hard to see. So next time you're flying in fog, remember that those runways aren't just plain old concrete strips. They're like highways with smart lighting, ensuring that the plane can land safely and precisely. Okay, so now we're flying into that fog, and it's getting really thick. The runway lights are still visible from where we first spotted them, but everything else is shrouded in mist. How do pilots know where to go? Here's the next crucial step. They rely on instruments. Imagine you're driving a car at night with no streetlights. Your headlights and GPS are your only guides. For pilots, it's similar, but instead of a GPS, they use something called an instrument landing system, ILS. The ILS works kind of like a super precise version of those airport approach lights we saw earlier. It gives the plane two very important pieces of information: direction and distance from the runway. Here's how it breaks down. 1. Direction. The ILS has a localizer that points you in the right direction, just like your compass always shows you north. 2. Distance. There's another part called the glide slope that tells you if you're too high or too low, kind of like a vertical line on your GPS showing you how far up or down to go. So, here's the neat part. Even though we can't see much outside, the ILS gives us exact directions and distance. It's like having a super smart co-pilot guiding us in from miles away. And here's another surprise. Pilots often use something called an autopilot system during this phase. Think of it as a really smart cruise control for planes. The autopilot keeps the plane flying straight and steady, letting the crew focus on making sure everything is perfect before they take manual control again when they're close enough to land. The autopilot doesn't replace the pilots. It just helps them do their job better in conditions where visibility is low or non-existent. It's like having a very skilled chauffeur who drives while you sit back and make sure all the stops are where they should be. So, even if we can't see anything outside the plane, those instruments are doing an incredible job of guiding us right down to that runway. And that's how pilots know exactly where to go when there's just a thick layer of fog out there. Okay, so we've got our aircraft on final approach, feeling its way through that dense fog with its instruments doing all the hard work. And here's a pretty cool part. It's almost like the plane has its own set of eyes. Imagine you're driving at night, and there's this one little light moving parallel to your path. That's kind of like what pilots use for guidance, but much more precise. This is called the localizer. It's a constantly shining beacon that points directly down the runway center line. The plane can follow this line with incredible accuracy because it's always there, even in the fog. And here's the surprising part. Right below your aircraft, there's another little light guiding you down, the glide slope. This one is like an invisible laser beam that shows you exactly where to fly to land safely. It slopes gently downward at a specific angle, and the plane's instrument can see this slope perfectly even when it's foggy outside. Think of it as if your car has headlights that not only light up the road, but also have built-in sensors that adjust their focus based on how far or near you are from the edge. The localizer and glide slope work in a similar way, giving pilots clear instructions on where to fly. So when those lights disappear because of fog, it's like they never go away thanks to these invisible guidance systems. It's incredibly rare for the plane to lose both signals, but if it does happen, there are backup procedures that ensure safety. And here's something amazing. Even if it's foggy outside, pilots can land safely because they have a clear idea of how high up the plane is. It's like flying with a built-in sense of altitude. Imagine you're on a roller coaster climb to the top of a hill. You know exactly when the ride will start going down and where that moment feels just right. Pilots do something similar, but in the sky. They use instruments called altimeters to keep track of their height above the ground or sea level. The way they do this is pretty cool. Inside the plane, there's a small metal box connected to a barometer and an aneroid cell. Think of these as tiny weather stations that measure pressure changes. These instruments work together to give the pilots a precise altitude reading. Even when it's foggy outside with zero visibility, the altimeter shows them exactly how high they are. Pilots also use something called barometric altitude, which is based on air pressure. When you're flying at 35,000 feet, for example, your altimeter will show that exact height no matter what the weather conditions are like outside. It's like having a trusty map that shows your precise location even in thick fog. And here's the part most people don't know. Pilots aren't just relying on their eyes or instruments alone. They work closely with air traffic controllers who guide them through the final approach using radio communication. Controllers help by giving altitude instructions and ensuring the plane stays on course, just like a highway sign pointing you in the right direction. So, even if it's foggy outside, pilots have a clear idea of how high up they are. This means that when it's time to start descending for landing, they can do so with confidence and precision. It's not magic, just a carefully calibrated system designed to keep everyone safe. So, to answer your question, landing in fog isn't just possible. It's a routine part of aviation. Pilots are trained to handle these conditions safely and efficiently. Here's how they do it. Imagine you're driving your car on a foggy morning. You can barely see the road ahead, but your GPS keeps giving you clear directions, right? That's kind of like what happens when pilots land in fog. They rely on their instruments just as you might use a map and compass to navigate through the mist. Pilots have special flight instruments called pilotage that help them stay aligned with the runway. These instruments are designed to show the plane's position relative to the ground, even if it's shrouded in fog. The pilot can see these indicators on their primary flight displays, PFDs, and use them like a map for landing. And here's the surprising part. They don't just rely on one instrument. They have multiple systems working together. It's kind of like having a GPS, a compass, and a map all at once. For example, they might use instruments that track their position using radio signals from navigation beacons nearby, or they could use radar altimeters to measure the distance between the plane and the ground. These redundant systems ensure that if one instrument fails, another will still give them accurate information. Incredibly rare is an actual crash due to poor visibility like fog. The odds of having all these systems fail at once are so minuscule that it's practically unheard of. That's why landing in fog isn't just safe, it's incredibly safe.